Hello and welcome to the Talking NorCal podcast, the official podcast of Active NorCal. I'm your host, Zach O'Brien. With me here, it's Bob. I don't have a nickname for you this week, Bob, but I
thought you were going to make fun of my shirt for sure.
Well, I am. I've been singing Seal, Kissed by a Rose in my mind ever since I saw your shirt.
You know what? We were wondering why that song was stuck in your head. Now
Kissed
it makes sense.
by a rose on the... I don't know the words.
I'll make fun of your singing voice.
We have a really great episode. This week we did an interview with Randy Robbins. He is a wildlife photographer up in Lassen County. He's got some really cool stuff. He won a huge award for a photo of an eagle at Antelope Lake. He has all these crazy pictures of mountain lions, and his new bucket list is to photograph the Lassen Pack. So we had a great discussion with him. We'll get to that here in a little bit. First, this episode of the Talking NorCal podcast is brought to you by the Active NorCal store. Go to store.activenorcal.com and use the code NorCal to get 10% off your first purchase of some NorCal swag. We got Hella shirts. We got NorCal shirts. We got all sorts of great stuff there. Sweatshirts, hats, women's shirts, all sorts of cool stuff.
Hella merch.
We got hella merch. So go to, once again, store.activenorcal.com. Use the code NorCal to get 10% off.
What is that again, Zach?
Store.activenorcal.com.
What was the promo code one more time?
NorCal.
For 10% off.
For 10%. Oh, thanks. You're just repeating it for me. Hey, that's good ad read right there. I don't write any of this stuff down. Is maybe
you're telling me like I don't know this.
I just go off a whim. But yeah, it's.
I'm just trying to put an exclamation point on your ad read.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's not an ad read. It's just an ad off the top of my head because that's I know our store. Our store's got hella good merch.
Hella merch.
And I know if you use the code NorCal on your first purchase, you can get 10% off. Go check it out. We got great stuff out there. Represent NorCal the right way with the Active NorCal store. We got a ton to get into, so let's just hop right into it with the Tahoes. Hella NorCal.
NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and I could spend all day just chilling in the South Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and Darren knows how to do kick it down in Santa Cruz. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and we get a little cray-cray when we visit the East Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal.
It's a beautiful day here in Northern California, and it's actually overcast outside today, which is a little shocking. It was a nice. It made me think of summer in San Francisco today when I was here in Sacramento. But we have a great interview coming up with Randy Robbins, and then at the end we want to talk about it. This week is a anniversary of the Carr Fire. So we want to talk about that at the end of the podcast. So I think we should just start out with the, let's just get into the news of the week.
All right, first story. Lassen Volcanic National Park issues closures due to the Dixie Fire.
The Dixie Fire is, we're doing this on July 27th. It is Tuesday, July 27th. It is currently the 15th largest fire in California's history, which is crazy. It's only July. It moved from the Plumas National Forest through Butte all the way into Lassen and the Lake Almanor area, which is, there's evacuations everywhere. And because the fire may move into Lassen Volcanic National Park, they have closed a lot. They've closed all backcountry camping. They've closed the Warner Valley and Juniper Lake, and Drake's Bad Guest Ranch is also closed. So not only are these, they just don't want to have to deal with any rescues during the wildfire. It could be super dangerous, but also the air quality there is horrendous. So basically, don't go to Lassen probably right now.
Yeah, it's weird. I actually had a couple customers, excuse me, at the winery this week that were on a road trip around California, Arizona. They were going to New Mexico, maybe Nevada, and they had stopped at Lassen Volcanic National Park. And they said Lassen, and they had no idea that I had known so much about Lassen. I was like, where'd you go? Bumpus Hell? Where'd you go? Like in Manzanita Lake. And they didn't say anything about it. Now, I don't know how many weeks ago they had been on this trip for several weeks. So they probably had gone there maybe even before the Dixie Fire started. But they didn't mention anything about the smoke, which makes me think it was a bit longer ago than maybe this week. But, yeah, I hate to see this.
Well, just in the last couple days, the fire has ballooned. It's grown, another like 25%. It's now at, I think this morning it was over 200,000 acres. Again, already the 15th largest fire in California's history, which is crazy. And I'll get into sort of, the fires later when we talk about the Carr Fire. But I thought they might do this, and, they never really close Lassen for smoke because you're going to get smoke in the summer no matter what, and it's anybody's, it's up to the person to deal with that however they want, whether they go and deal with it or not go at all. But they're actually issuing closures, which is pretty shocking, and I can't remember happening in Lassen due to fire. Now, they closed actually a lot of backcountry camping last summer because there were too many bear incidents that were going on. So this certainly isn't unprecedented, but the Butte Lake campground is closed. Again, all backcountry camping. So this Dixie Fire, by the way, and we posted this on the website, the Lassen locals, specifically people in like the Lake Almanor region, are asking people to stay away right now because they're having sweeping blackouts due to the fire, and a lot of people are either evacuated or packed up and ready to evacuate, and really just their infrastructure can't handle visitors right now, the regular tourism crowd. So they're asking people to just stay away. So I think, don't go to Lassen.
Yeah, it sucks. It's a great place to go. I love it. And this time of year is usually, it's a nice time to go because it's usually a little bit cooler there than it is in it's only 82 degrees here today, but I think that's because of the cloud cover a little bit, but we're used to it being around the 100 right now.
Yeah, and typically in a big snow year, this would be Lassen would just be opening up really in late June-ish. So this is like you still would see snow on the ground in Lassen in a lot of cases, but not right now. So right now it's perfect early summer conditions at Lassen, but
could we use a massive snow year?
Yeah, yes, we could. Yeah, did you see the photo we posted of Lake Orville?
I did not.
It's a river. It's not even a lake right now. It is historically low. And we didn't want to get it. We talk about it too much on this podcast. We didn't want to get into the drought too much, but it's kind of crazy what we're seeing with the water right now.
Well, speaking of water, the next story, harmful algae blooms are wreaking havoc in Northern California rivers. A lot of it because the water levels are so low that these harmful algae are able to survive. The warmer temperatures are better for these algae, and it's harmful for children, for dogs. This is not a positive story.
Yeah, we see these algae blooms all the time. I heard there were some over at Lake Britain near Bernie recently. And especially, like you said, in a drought year, in a warmer year, you're going to see more of these. Because there's less water, you get less flow going through the water. It sits there, and it's just it's perfect for these blooms to sort of sprout up. And if you didn't know, these can be detrimental to your health. They have bacteria in them, much like what's the one that E. coli. It's not the same as E. coli, but it's something that if you swim through, you could get sick. And basically, on the South Fork of the Eel River, just north of Wheat, California, a person became very ill after their time in the Eel River. Then, in the Trinity River, just east of Willow Creek, a dog actually died after swimming in the river, and they're pretty sure this bacteria from these blue-green algae was the cause of it. So kind of crazy.
Yeah, what stuck out to me a little bit. Well, first of all, we swam in a lot of rivers similar to this as all of our lives. We liked to our dad would take us fishing, and we would always end up swimming. I personally would always not like algae, the green slimy stuff in the water. I would always avoid that.
Yep.
And in the article that posted on activenorcal.com talks about how children and animals tend to be higher at risk because they tend to, well, first of all, they're smaller with probably lower immune systems, but also they tend to stay in the water longer. And also, children probably like to play with some of that algae sometimes.
And accidentally eat it and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Swallow the water. When I was reading this, I thought of, this is totally way off topic, but speaking of E. coli, there is the Chef Show with Jon Favreau based on his movie Chef. Well, in one episode, he had on Seth Rogen, and they were making chicken. Now, Seth Rogen had acted in a film before where he played a chef, and a chef actually taught him how to break down a chicken and taught him how to look at touching raw chicken as poison. This is poison. If you touch it, that poison is on your finger now. And it reminded me of that.
Yeah.
But parents almost need to say to the kids, if you swallow that, it's poisonous, but it's not something that is talked about enough. It's not that big of an issue until you get into these drought years where the water's warmer and it's a much better climate for these algae to grow.
It's gonna be a growing problem this year just due to the lack of water. You can see algae blooms, like it's algae. It looks like algae, right? So you can see it. You can also just Google each different body of water and see if there is a reported algae bloom.
It also says that sometimes that those like foam bubbles can contain, the foam that you see in rivers. It always looks like dirty, but those are potentially pockets for these algae to live. And I've always looked at that floating foam as gross, but now I know that it's literally potentially hazardous and toxic.
Also, fishing, if you're fishing, it's, they say only after you remove the guts and the liver and then rinse out the fish should you eat it. You should probably just not eat the fish, I would assume. They had this problem at Whiskeytown Lake a couple years back where they said, don't eat the fish right now because we're having these algae blooms. The fish consume the algae, and then you eat it if you eat the fish. So
they say that if you do, you just need to de-gut the fish and rinse it with clean tap water before cooking. Yeah, I probably wouldn't do it, but it probably is fairly safe. Even E. coli can't live through cooking. You cook out certain toxins, and I'm assuming that's what they mean by this. Don't go here. Here's one thing: don't go use fish that you find in this area as sushi. How about that?
Right. One statistic that I found fascinating is since 2001. This is in Humboldt specifically. Since 2001, there have been 12 documented dog deaths locally, where the dog died shortly after swimming in. It was either the Big Lagoon, South Fork Eel River, or the Van Duzen River, and each one they confirmed that the dog had drank the water and died. So I did not know that's a big number.
12 since 20 years. 12. That's not a small number.
Yeah,
and every dogs are like, when you have a dog, it's a member of the family.
They're drinking the water. Right. Yeah. It's tough. It's tough to lose a dog.
Totally. R.I.P. the dogs.
Yeah, but there was a person became ill last week right after a dog died. So, this is stay away. If you see these algae blooms, just stay away is probably the best way to do
and if you're a parent, teach your kids that these algae are gross and poisonous. And if you're going to, first of all, probably if you're a parent, don't bring your kids to these areas to go swimming. It's probably the best idea. But if you do, just tell them that drinking the water is poisonous.
Right. Yep.
That's from Dr. Bob.
Dr. Bob. All right. What do we got next?
So this one's a really cool story, and one that I had not heard about before this story. Marijuana travel is coming to Northern California. A brand new cannabis-themed hotel is coming to Humboldt.
We sort of talked about this recently about
You brought it up. You kind of were like, I see
Cannabis tourism.
Cannabis coming to like turning the Humboldt area into Napa, and now we kind of several weeks later see it come into fruition.
Yeah, it's what's the name of this hotel is the Scotia Lodge. The Scotia Lodge, it's in Humboldt. Sitting right near Humboldt Redwood State Park. And, it's an older hotel that this group called Humboldt Social. And this group they're sort of like, they're trying to normalize the connection between cannabis and hospitality, right?
I love that line. I love that line. I love that line. As soon as I read that, I started to do research on this company.
Yeah, so they're working to sort of revamp this hotel to make it cannabis. I don't even know which cannabis friendly.
Totally.
Yeah.
Almost encouraging cannabis use.
So they're going to have a cannabis consumption lounge, a spa, a dispensary restaurant. I don't know. Does that mean they serve like cannabis delicacies? Probably. And they're going to have a tasting room nearby Eureka.
Well, my favorite thing about them is the fact that you basically have room service of a dispensary.
Yeah.
You have a full menu in your room, and you can place an order just like you would room service, and within 30 minutes that'll arrive in your room. And I am assuming every room is a smoking room at that hotel.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think about that. So they just reopened in July, and there's 22 rooms. It's like I said, it's like this older building, and they have this great kitchen and bar, and it's such a good idea. And not only like, okay, so let's go to the Redwoods, right? Let's go to Humboldt Redwood State Park. Let's go hike around. Let's go see the Avenue of Giants. By the way, let's have some cannabis while we're doing it. I mean, it's like the perfect combination for people that want to. It just seems to go hand in hand.
So you go to, let's say you go to Cancun, Mexico. You stay at an all-inclusive resort. The all-inclusive part of that is alcohol in food, right? But the majority of the expense is coming from the alcohol. So when people are going to have a leisurely vacation and you are a more marijuana consumer versus like an alcohol drinker, this is absolutely perfect for you. I can see this exploding. I really want to see Humboldt become the Napa of weed. I very much do. I'm an advocate. I went to this Humboldt social webpage, and they do say hospitality owners and operators have no shared ownership with cannabis entities. They're putting out this disclaimer and this disclosure. But
so basically what you're saying is they're selling for the the dispensary like sets up shop in the hotel and is selling their own stuff.
To me, it's more that they are in charge of the hospitality aspect and partnering with appropriate companies in the local area to provide those cannabis items. I don't know that, but it says that they don't own them, so I'm sure that they're just doing their due diligence to just offer the best products possible.
Yeah. Let's keep an eye. Remember this name, Humboldt Social.
Oh, I followed them all over. In fact, I followed them on Instagram. They don't even have a single post.
I know. I was like, I looked them up, and I said, well, I'm not going to follow these people because they might just have the name Humboldt Social or whatever. But these people are, they say they're hoping to create the Napa Valley of cannabis in Northern California, and they're. They already have like a couple locations in like the Eureka area, and what they're doing could be, and who knows if they're actually going to be the ones that create this quote unquote Napa of cannabis, but they could be, like we keep putting our eye on the cannabis tourism industry in Humboldt, and it will be big. I mean, you look at Napa and how much money that place generates due to the wine. This stuff will be big, and people, could travel from all over the world to do this cannabis stuff in the Emerald Triangle, which is probably the largest, creator or whatever, cultivator of cannabis on the planet. So we really got to keep an eye on this because, they're normalizing this cannabis in hospitality, and you know, it's just going to be fascinating to watch. I'm really fascinated by what they're doing and what could happen in that area.
Aaron Sweat, who is co-founder of Humboldt Social, was quoted in this Forbes article about this hotel. Aaron, come on the pod, my friend. We'd love to chat with you.
Or Amy O'Connor, who is also a founder of Humboldt. Yeah, we need them on because
we'd love to talk with you about this.
It's funny. We've talked about this. We're trying to talk cannabis more and more with Active NorCal, with our website, with this podcast, because I do believe it is. I mean, we've been talking beer forever, you know, on Active NorCal because it goes hand in hand with what we do. I think cannabis goes hand in hand with what we do. So, but the problem is we have not been able to get cannabis growers to publicly come out and talk to us as much as I would like. So maybe it's someone, you know, maybe this is maybe this is the catalyst of people starting to be... This is the weed branch that can be handed out to do it through these this Humboldt Social.
Extending a joint, if you will.
Yeah. But a historic hotel with weed, with a bar, with safe places for cannabis consumption.
And in driving distances to a lot of other really cool tourist places. And so I think it's everything about it is... I mean, I looked into it right away. Like, I wonder if they have a chef. Like, what's up with the food there? And yeah, I'm fascinated. I'd love to visit.
Yeah. The building's from 1923, the Mowatok Hotel. So it's and by the way, it is at the entrance of the Redwood National Park. So I'm really excited to see this area blossom. I have known this area and these people as illegal growers for years. I mean, I've been close friends with some of these people and seeing what they went through, and now seeing it become normalized and become commercialized, I suppose. And I know that's typically a bad thing. It's kind of the gentrification of the weed.
We're normalizing it. You know? It's just becoming culturally accepted, and I'm all for it.
But a lot of money could pour into that area.
No, a lot of money will pour in.
A lot of money will.
We're just hoping that it's done right, and it looks like Humboldt Social is leading the pack, and it seems like they're doing it the right way.
Yes, and this is in the Humboldt Bay area. They estimate the Humboldt Bay area has 12,000 cannabis farms. That's crazy to think about. That they know about, exactly. Yeah, so I'm really excited for this, and so we're going to keep our eye, and yes, people at Humboldt Social, we're going to reach out to you soon because we'd love to talk to you about the Napa Valley of cannabis here in Northern California.
Boom. And that does it for the NorCal Notes of the Week.
Okay, we're moving right along because we have this great interview. Up next, we have Randy Robbins. He is a great wildlife photographer over in Lassen County. Let's go to Randy. All right, we'd now like to welcome on a very special guest. He is an award-winning wildlife photographer right here in Northern California. Randy Robbins, thanks for coming on the show today. How's it going, man?
Thanks, man. Pretty good. We're hanging in Susanville with a whole bunch of wildfire smoke, which is no fun. I'm not in my office. I don't have internet. We got power outages. We got drama, but here we are. Right.
So tell me, I know you're up in the Lassen area. How's everything going with the Dixie Fire? Is it mostly smoke? I know you're dealing with like some blackouts up there too.
Yeah, so we're dealing with smoke and ash. I mean, I feel bad almost whining about it when you got people, losing homes and all that. We had the sheep fire last year. I was evacuated for a week. We had burned right down to my property line. So I kind of get what they're dealing with on the other side of the hill. But basically, Klamath National Forest is, just tragic. All these places that I know so well. I grew up over there. I was born in Chester, raised in Greenville. And so all these places are very familiar that are burning. But we're kind of right on the other side of the mountain and getting the smoke plume and dealing with the power's back. Now we had about a week of power outages from, the PG&E line going down, and it's just no good, man. It's
Yeah, it's terrible, especially in the Klamath National Forest. They've seen so much fire in the last 2 years,
Yeah.
Not to go like too deep into this, but like, do you ever like think about like, oh man, I live in like a really bad spot? Do you ever reconsider sort of where you're going to live based on these fires that have happened the last couple of years?
Not until recently. We had this fire that burned last year, the sheep fire. We saw it coming. You're like watching the red blob on the map, right? It's so hard to get information, and it comes like down the mountain, and then you're like, okay, here's our house, and you see the red blob like get up to your property line. You're like, oh man, and then you see it go by, and you're inside the red blob for the next 3 or 4 days of updates. And you're like, what just happened? Did we lose the place? And you have those conversations like, at what point is it not worth living there? Like, part of the reason we live in the woods is because we love the woods, right? And at what percentage of trees being gone do you just not want to live in a wasteland anymore? So we had that conversation. We're like, man, is it 60%, 70%? What, how many trees you got to lose before this isn't where we want to be anymore? So thankfully our property came through, but it's a mess.
My father, he actually left Northern California some years ago, and he wants to move back. And he's like a nature nut, he wants to live out in the woods. And he's like, man, I just don't know about moving there now because of the threat of wildfire. But so it's a weird time. We don't have to go too far into it. We talk about fires on this podcast way too much because it's like anything having to do about the outdoors, we got to give the news about what's open. Lassen just announced a bunch of closures. So it's part of the job now, but it's no fun.
It's easy to make it a political conversation too, which I don't want to get, I don't want to get deep in, but man, like my dad was a logger growing up. Family worked in the woods, in all this area that's now burning. It was logged a lot prior to the spotted owl being put on the endangered species list in like the mid to late 80s, right? And then it was kind of, everybody had to kind of walk away, and now you got dead wood accumulating for 30 years and a drought on top of that, bad snowpack. And a lot of people around here are kind of going, well, yeah, what did you think was going to happen? So
yeah, that's well, okay, we're going into this conversation because
here we go.
Well, you mentioned the spotted owl, and they've been talking about this in the Shasta Trinity National Forest up near Weaverville for 12 years. And they have not clear cut in that area. They've not cleaned up that area for 12 years because it's being litigated by environmentalists. So as a wildlife photographer who has, you clearly have a passion for these animals, what's it like thinking about, messing with their homes versus, the threat of wildfire?
Yeah. Well, so when like growing up, the conversation was more around like whether or not these animals like preferred to live in old growth forests versus new growth. Right. And I wasn't a wildlife photographer then. So it was like on the frustration end of like, dad's going to lose his job. Everybody's getting laid off because of these little owls or whatever, and the conversation then was, well, they prefer old growth forest to new growth forest. They can live fine in new growth forest, but they like the old growth. So we're going to affect all these livelihoods to protect these owls. And like now I'm kind of more, I lean, like I'm such a conservationist. I love nature. I love the wildlife, and I want the wildlife to be happy, but you've also got humans in this picture, and like it or not, we're sharing this place with the wildlife, and the more you get into the environmentalist conversation, an environmentalist isn't a bad word. Like, I'm an environmentalist, I feel like a lot of people politically, especially around Lassen County, are environmentalist is like dirty word. They're horrible, people, and it's just not true. But the further you pursue that conversation. Like at some point, the best thing for wildlife is for humankind to just be eradicated from the planet, right? Like we all need to be out of the picture so the animals can have the place. And that's not a reality. That's not where we're living. So there's a balance there somewhere. You know, there's a balance there somewhere.
I appreciate that viewpoint you have, because I'm sort of the same way. I am quote unquote an environmentalist, but at the same time, I truly believe that specifically this case that's in the Shasta National Forest, they need to clear cut that area because it's really in the way of the town of Weaverville, where there could be a really bad fire there. But I think you mentioned politics. I think everyone wants to blame it on one specific thing when it's clearly a group of different aspects that are causing these fires. And certainly not cleaning up our forests is one of them. I mean, the Native Americans taught us that we should do that. But it's trying to make it one specific reason is just is insane.
Yeah, so. It really is. There's a lot going on, a lot of facets to that conversation. But
yes. But I want to talk about you today because you are an awesome photographer. I've been following you for years. And quite frankly, you've given us a ton of ammo for our social media page and for our website.
I love the shares. Thanks for that, man. Yeah.
Yeah. We featured a lot of your work on our website, and I don't know if you knew this, but we did an article about this mountain lion photo you took in the middle of the day, and with one of your wildlife cameras, and we put sort of a sexy headline on it, and that's kind of our job. But it was our most read article of 2020. It got nearly 500,000 impressions on our website.
Wow, sweet.
You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah. So that was on my property, kind of bordering my neighbor's property, and I got this lion walking by my camera with a pickup truck, right? Like a red pickup going by, and it seeing like a mountain lion human interaction on camera is pretty darn rare, and it just that blew my mind, thinking, okay, this thing's not only is it cruising by in the middle of the day, but it's got people, and it was watching those people get in the pickup, and this is all a couple hundred yards from my house, and I was home. Wow. I wish I'd have been out there seeing him, but that was a remote camera. But yeah, totally remember that clip.
Yeah, it was such a. I mean, we just, we need these like backcountry cameras to be able to see what's going on. I think it tells the story that with the human naked eye, we can't see because these animals they're hiding from us,
right?
For the most part, or they're out at night for the most part. How did you get into setting up these backcountry cameras and sort of documenting all the wildlife in your area?
I kind of fell into it, realizing that I live like where my house is just kind of this natural bottleneck sort of wildlife highway kind of thing. And I would see, like in the wintertime, I'd see tracks back there and think, man, is that a cat? Is that a bobcat? What is that? And, kind of got into studying animal tracks and learning what all these things were. And I was like, well, these, trail cameras and that kind of technology was getting cheaper and cheaper. So I started, I got one camera, and I started getting, kind of foxes and it just becomes this like challenge. Like, okay, what else is out there? Then you get out and find the game trails and, figure out where to set these cameras up. I started reading like hunting blogs. Really is like the best place for animal behavior studies. I started reading these hunters that are been using these trail cameras for a long time and studying the patterns of these, animals, and started applying that to the backyard, and that just kind of grew. Now I've got a camera trap, like a nice DSLR remote camera with an infrared trigger and some flash units, and that's kind of my latest little obsession is getting that. I've got wolves on the radar with that, man. I'm kind of really wanting to get the Lassen Pack and getting out there with the rarest of the big predators in California right now.
So you do have them triggered. So if something walks by, then it takes a picture. Like you're not going through thousands of hours of footage to see these things.
Right, correct. That you can set, you can do video or still photos, but it's basically the same technology that like a motion light would be on. It's just applied to a wireless signal, and then there's a receiver at the camera that picks up that signal. It's a pretty amazing system, really, because this trigger that I have, made by a company called Camtraptions out of the UK, and they're kind of the leader in this technology. But the trigger will sense motion. It'll send a wake up signal to your flashes, which the flashes are set on a really low intensity. They're like on 1/16th power. So it's like this soft sort of pop of light. But it'll wake the flashes up, and then it'll send a signal to the camera, and then the camera pops after the flashes are awake, and you get everything in sync when the shutter drops. It's pretty amazing.
That's so cool. One of my favorite things you've done is actually your composites of all the animals you've gotten on a backcountry camera. You got, like 25 different species of animals in one photo to sort of show this, this wildlife highway you have near your yard. What have you learned about wildlife from setting up these cameras and sort of watching them in their natural state?
Yeah, it's crazy to see a few things. I mean, just how much is out there, really. Like, we're sharing this place with a lot of critters that we never see, that they're all nocturnal, or they're using our backyards when we're not, basically, learning their sort of the way that they interact with our stuff. With like that picture that you're talking about, I had a camera on the same tree for 7 or 8 years now, so it's still there. And it's a Bushnell, by the way, trophy cam. It's an old cheap trail camera that's been like this bulletproof piece of equipment. So if you're trail cam shopping, I'm not sponsored or anything, but I've had other brands freak out and die after a year or two, and this thing's been like a rock. But anyway, the way that they come, that's in my little campfire area in the backyard. So I've got a little fire pit there, some chairs and stuff. And these animals, like mountain lions and bobcats and stuff, they get used to those things being there, and they just ignore it. They come right by. We always think like deep woods is where you're going to see these, more, big game kind of like predator animals, and it's just not true. They get used to where we're at, and they're right there on the fringes of where we live, and they're fine with us. And we freak out about it when we see them, like, oh, everybody, this thing's got to be like violent and wanting to kill everybody. But I've gotten the same mountain lion on the backyard cameras for several years now. And it's a big male, I think male mountain lion, because of they have like a black patch of fur, like in that manly part of the mountain lion, like under the tail kind of. And I had it walk like over a camera. I'm like, oh, that's a boy, but it's been cruising through the property ever since I've lived there. And it's never, I've got 2 cats that live outside. I got a dog running around. Nothing's dying. Nobody's getting eaten. My kids are fine. They're out there all the time. They're not these mindless sort of predators that people think that they are,
Yeah. And I think that's what's interesting. Like the mountain lion photo we talked about earlier with the people sort of in the background.
Mm-hmm.
From the picture, it kind of looks like it's like stalking them almost. But when you look at it, it's kind of just waiting for them to pass on by and just kind of minding its own business, It's
like going about its day, Yeah, it's just,
right.
Oh, there's some people. You wonder how often you're close to them and just never know. That's always fascinating me. Like, how many times have you been close to one and never knew it was there?
Right. Probably a lot.
Probably haven't.
What animal do you see the most with your cameras?
On my particular property, Well, squirrels, for crying out loud. The squirrels are everywhere, right? I don't really publish those pictures, but I'll go check a camera and I'll have, let's say it's been out there for 2 or 3 weeks and I've got 1,000 pictures on there. Like 500 of them will be squirrels, right? The next 300 will be deer. And then kind of a mix among the rest will be foxes, bobcat, rarely a mountain lion. That guy probably comes through every 6-8 weeks or something like that, maybe. If he goes by a camera at all, I'll go months and months without seeing it. But yeah, raccoons, skunks, a bunch of mammals. We've got a ton of critters, but I would say the big ones, obviously squirrels, deer, coyotes, bobcat, fox. And then kind of gets more rare with the mountain lions and those bigger, other kind of critters. But
that's so cool. I'm also really curious about, you get a lot of on location photography. Like, all your photography is not like your set up cameras. You actually go out and you photograph wildlife, and you have a bunch of different stuff you do. I want to know a little bit about the life of a wildlife photographer, because we see the end result.
Right.
I'm guessing you sit in locations for a very long time to get these. So tell me, like, when you're going out, what's a normal day like? Are you sitting in camouflage, just waiting?
Mm-hmm.
Are you fishing with your camera at your hip? What are you doing?
Yeah. So for me, like the easy sort of backyard animals that I know I can find every single time are bald eagles for me. I got 3 or 4 nests that I know right where they are, and the times a year that they're going to be working on the nest or having babies or whatever. I can go find bald eagles pretty easy. And a lot of what I'll do with them is I know where these nests are on local lakes, and I'll go fishing. I have a kayak. I love fishing in the kayak. Is like me time, right? I love getting out there, cruising around, just being on a lake. And I'll just kind of be scanning and watching for eagles, and I'll go toward the nest when I'm not seeing them. I'll go find them, and a lot of times with like a bald eagle, you'll be out in the kayak and you'll see an eagle sitting in a treetop. I'll just pull over on shore, get out of the kayak and sit down and just wait for it to do something, really, and you wind up sitting there for 45 minutes, an hour. They're patient birds, they'll just sit there and not do anything for a long time. But if you want that flight picture, if you want it taken off or whatever, you just got to outweight them. And I've sat, a long time waiting for a bird to take off, but those are the guaranteed sightings. I've got I've kind of got hunting gear. There's kind of a controversy in wildlife photography with altering animal behavior, right? Like baiting an animal is considered like a faux pas. Like that's you're messing with their thing, and it's not okay. I generally agree with that. I think like I don't want a picture of a coyote that I've trained to come in and eat food out of my hand or whatever. Not into that. But I have employed some like hunting techniques with camo and with game calls, and trying to get an animal to sort of come to your area. Where I kind of land on that is with, I've called in coyotes with like distress calls, and just like a hunter would. And if the animal's close enough to hear the call and wants to come check it out, I don't feel like you're altering their behavior much when you're, coyotes quarter mile away in the woods and it runs over here to hear what's going on, and you get a picture of it and it goes back about its day when it realizes that was nothing. I don't have a problem with that personally, and I don't really see the issue. If anything, I've trained that animal to not come to a human call. Maybe next time when someone's out there hunting it, it'll be a little smarter. So. But I do have that. I have blinds and camouflage and game calls, and I've dabbled with that quite a bit. Not to as much success as I would like, honestly. I have called in one mountain lion, which was the biggest, backcountry rush I've ever experienced. It's just absolutely crazy to see one of those things come walking out of the woods.
Well, what was that like? Like, how close did you get?
I was probably 50, 60 feet from the thing. I found a deer kill that mountain lions will kill a deer and eat and then bury it, kind of halfway in the pine needles and stuff. And then they'll come back and work on it for the next week or so sometimes. Well, 5 days, I guess, is like the average I've read. So I found this and I knew what it was. So I got all camoed up in a like ghillie suit, kind of leafy camo thing, got myself in a bush and started calling. There's a mountain lion, like they call to each other with like a chirp sort of sound, like a squeak almost. It's really not what you'd think a mountain lion would sound like.
Yeah, it's weird.
So in the hopes that, it was somewhere nearby sleeping it off, which it obviously was, and would think that another cat was in the area, maybe going to mess with its dinner, so called for like a half an hour, motionless, I'm just sitting there waiting, and you got this little remote for the call, and pretty soon the thing just is standing there. Like you don't see where it comes from. They're so stealthy. All of a sudden there's just this shape, in the woods. It's like, oh man, what have I done? Right. This thing is now, right there. So I watched it kind of stalk in and, scan the area looking for this other cat. It went right over to the deer kill and was kind of standing over it. And I started taking pictures. And this was before mirrorless, like silent cameras, right? So I start cracking off pictures and it heard my camera shutter. And so it looks, starts looking around. It's like finding this lens, sticking out of the bush, and you could see it find me. I don't know if it knew I was a human because I'm like decked out in camo or whatever. But that moment of like eye contact is just absolutely nuts, man. It was so crazy. And it, again, they don't want to eat you. They don't, they're not mindless killers. It kind of sized up the situation and looked at me, didn't like it, and grabbed the deer by the neck and dragged it off into the woods. I got like 30 or 40 pictures, and I'm sitting there like, that was crazy, and I bailed in the other direction once it was gone. But yeah, it was nuts.
That's awesome.
That's a success story, right? So then the opposite end of that, you're asking about just the wildlife photography experience. This last winter, I had a dead deer show up on my property. Like it looked like it died of natural causes. It was laying there right before everything started to kind of freeze up. I found it on the property, thought, wow, this is crazy. I put a trail camera on it and I started checking it like almost daily. I'm checking the thing every couple of days. Nothing touched it for like a month because it was frozen. It didn't really smell or anything. And then I had a bobcat find it. A bobcat is like my nemesis creature. Like I cannot get a good photo of a bobcat. Every time I get on Facebook, there's 15 photographers that have a bobcat like hanging out in the backyard, right? Like laying on the porch. They're everywhere, right? I get one of my trail cameras a lot. I've never gotten like a high quality, good, like portfolio quality image of a bobcat. So this bobcat finds the deer and I'm like, finally, right? This is like my moment. And this bobcat, I put little trail cameras out. It worked on this deer for a couple of weeks. It was like got it through the winter, right? It was the only animal that found it. It was burying itself in a snow kind of cave. We had a big snow right around the same time. And it was like along this dead log and it had this little hole and I could see where it was going in and out. And I went down there, I set up a photo blind, like a little tent, kind of camo, not too far away. And I was getting up at like 3:30, 4 in the morning and sneaking down into the photo blind, freezing cold, waiting it out until 7:38 in the morning when you got like that kind of morning, like dawn light kind of thing, just hoping for that transition because they're pretty nocturnal, but it would be on the trail camera, like with just barely maybe enough daylight to get a good solid photo, and for a couple weeks straight, I was in my photo blind in the, early 5s every morning, just waiting and watching this this dead deer waiting for this bobcat, and I never got him. Like, it never came in the daylight for me. I've got hours of footage on the trail cameras, infrared, and got nothing, no picture, sat there for 2 weeks. That's how it works sometimes,
I had a feeling that you have a few of those stories.
Yeah.
You just kind of have to go out there and be patient and I guess, quote unquote, get lucky. You try to bring the luck your way.
Right.
When you're out there, like, do you get like 1,000 photographs? Like, I see these photos of, say, eagles. I saw the one you had recently of eagles in the air. I mean, are you just getting like 1,000 photos and then sifting through and editing? What's the editing process like?
To some degree, yeah, depending on the situation. But I was talking about the eagle waiting in a tree, for the eagle to take off. I'll shoot, my cameras will shoot 10, 11 frames per second kind of thing. So if you see something happening, you can crack off a few hundred pictures in a hurry. Not too long ago, I had 2 bald eagles like fighting in the air over this dead fish that was floating on the water. I'm out there in the kayak and I've got like this eagle dog fight going on, and I probably took 500 pictures. So then, you go home and you're just hoping that, you can kind of flip through the camera, like, ooh, some of these might be good, but then there's little, I'm pretty picky about sharp focus and all those things you want, in a good photo. So you go through those 500 pictures and narrow it down to easily like 10, 12 that even potentially make the cut, and then from those, there's like 1 or 2 that might be really like the money shot, quote unquote, So you can take 1,000 pictures and keep one of them,
Yeah, it's a lot of work to get the right shot. Speaking of the right shot and speaking of eagles, you had a great shot of an eagle at Antelope Lake. It won the 2019 Sierra Nevada Conservancy California Wildlife Photo of the Year Award. Tell me about that image. Tell me what it took to get that, and sort of what happened to you after you won the award.
Yeah, that was kind of my first like viral kind of things where it really launched a lot of what I'm doing now. Put me on the map quite a bit for a lot of people. So I'd been going to Antelope Lake for years. I fish up there. The family goes up there. It's pretty local to Susanville. And, you see eagles every once in a while. And I finally decided, at that point, I didn't know where any bald eagle nests were. Like, I got to know where these things are nesting, because that lake's not that big. And I could walk around the thing in a day probably and locate this nest. So I went up there early that summer. That was 2019. As soon as the snow melted and everything, I went up there and just made it a mission that year to find where these things were nesting. And just put in the work and the hours, and finally find the nest. And they had eggs at that point, so I'm watching like the eagles sitting up there all the time. Finally they hatch, and kind of watching the whole process. And I'm watching them in this sort of cove where the nest was, and the adults would leave, and I would be taking pictures of these little juvenile eagles in the nest, which tough angle. It's like way up, you don't want to get too close, and it's hard to get a good shot in the nest. But then the adults would come back with fish, like consistently, like they're such good, hunters. And I thought, man, a picture of a bald eagle catching a fish would be like the bucket list, photo. And so I'm kind of at the nest area watching like the direction that they're going. And, this was like, I'd go up there once or twice a week for, throughout the summer. And the babies are getting bigger and bigger. Eventually they're going to be hunting on their own, so I'm worried I'm not going to figure out where they're going. They fish all over the lake. They're in different places all the time, but they're we're going in the same direction. So I got the kayak up there, and I'm like kind of just watching where they were going more often than not, kind of just learning about eagle behavior and what they did. And that's a huge part of wildlife photography is just learning animal behavior, you know. So they like to fish where there's no water ripples on the water. You know, you watch them when it's windy, they'll bail. They go to the other side of the lake and they find whatever sheltered cove area where they can see down into the water, because they're hitting, you know, shallow swimming fish. And started watching that and realizing this one cove is almost always protected from the prevailing winds on that lake. And so I started hanging out over there, kind of watching the wind on the water like they were doing, and seeing them come. And I'd sit out there in the kayak, and there'd be an eagle in a tree, and I would sit there for, you know, an hour just waiting, hoping, you know, praying that this thing was going to see a fish and go for it. And then, you know, it'd get a little bit windy and breezy, and they would take off, go to the other side of the lake, you know. So that's weeks of that, you know, throughout the summer. Finally, I same situation. I'm on the kayak, I'm fishing, you know, hanging out, see the eagle where they're, you know, hunting, and pulled up on shore. And the sun was like directly in my eyes with the way the wind was blowing that day. It was all wrong. So I get the bright idea to go sit out in the water in the kayak. And now I shoot a ton of my pictures from the kayak all the time, just more comfortable on the water or whatever. But then I never was. The camera's like in a dry bag. You know, you got like $5,000, $6,000 worth of camera
right. Yeah.
on the kayak. Now I don't even think about it. But then it was like, do I want to get this thing out and go sit in the water and, you know, risk, you know, drowning my camera equipment or whatever? But I did, because it was like the you know, the light was going to be bad. So I paddled out with like the camera between my legs, you know, I'm like nervous, and sat out there and watched for, man, 20, 30 minutes. This bird finally takes off, and it was looking down at the water when it took off. I was like, oh man, this is it, you know. Did a big circle like around behind my head, and it came back in. And at that point, that camera was a little bit older, would only shoot, I think, 7 frames per second or something like that, which is still pretty fast. But the whole moment happened so fast. I mean, it's down and it's gone, and you're like, did that just happen? Did I get a picture of it? You know, what was that? And paddle back to shore, and I'm like flipping through the pictures and see that image, you know, that wound up winning that you know, contest. And yeah, it was a moment of like, all that time, all that effort was, you know, was worth it. In that 1/2000th of a second, you know, it paid for itself, you know. And so yeah, I didn't even know about that contest at the time. I threw that image on Facebook, and a bunch of friends were saying, you got to enter that somewhere, you know, do something. And then somebody said this contest existed, and it's California Fish and Wildlife is like the main sponsor, and then Sierra Nevada Conservancy, California Watchable Wildlife, and there's a couple other sponsors. But the like top images of the year are selected, and they all go to the director of Fish and Wildlife for like the winner selection. And then the winner gets introduced on the Senate floor in Sacramento, and they do like a, you know, really cool like Senate resolution thing, kind of acknowledging your work. And just that put my name out there more than anything before that ever had, you know. And that's when I started thinking about launching the Facebook page, and you know, going a little deeper with this hobby that's, you know, become more and more of a passion, kind of. So
yeah, no, I mean, getting recognized on the Senate floor, you know, the state Senate floors, I mean, that'll help.
Pretty awesome. Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
No, what you do is awesome though, and that image is once in a lifetime. You know, we don't see many of those. So I appreciate what you do, man. I'm a huge fan. Do you have any, like, what are your future plans? Are you just going to keep plugging along and taking your photos?
Yeah, I've got a few, like, you know, bucket list kind of things I want. I mean, the Lassen Pack, knowing that there's only a dozen, 20 maybe wolves in the state, and they're in my backyard, man. They're pretty close to Susanville, and they're, you know, I mean, they cover like a 500-mile range or something. But getting a getting good quality shots of that wolf pack would be high on the list.
Yeah, I've researched the Lassen Pack a ton, and I've maybe seen 12 photos of them.
Right.
Like, and especially ones that aren't the backcountry cameras, like actually people seeing them in the wild. It's so rare.
Yeah. So I've had conversations.
Awesome.
Yeah, with the Forest Service biologist named Kent Loudon, who's like the wolf expert guy. I've talked to him on the phone. Super nice guy. He obviously has a whole bunch of data that he can't share, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's got GPS data, and they got a caller on one of these things, and he's like almost feel like he's sort of cheering for me in the background, but he's like, you're not going to share, where these locations are, but they've got a ton of trail camera, video and photos because they kind of know where they're at. But there was a big article, I don't know if you saw, in the Smithsonian a few months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, and they brought in a photographer who got to go out with him, and I just wished that it was me. I'm like, man, if I was a little more out there, if I was a little more well known, but you bring in the Smithsonian photographer, and they're going to get the high quality images. But seeing those shots makes me think, man, that is so on the radar. Like, there's so much potential for getting some high quality photos of these guys. So yeah, I bugged him about that. I'm like, man, why are you bringing in a Smithsonian photographer from DC or somewhere when you could be working with a local guy, but maybe I'll go talk to them, and if I can talk them into letting us do it, and I'll get you a press pass out there. There you go.
There
you
go. That's me up. Yeah. I understand why they don't give coordinates just to anyone,
sure.
But those wolves are controversial, and so.
Yeah. But you know what? There's other ways to sort of find them. I've got a lot of buddies working in the woods, and a lot of ranching sort of families that they know where they're at. They're not. That's one thing about wolves. That's why people don't like them. Is they don't hide as well as like a mountain lion. If we knew how many mountain lions were like on the perimeters of our cities, we would be in a panic, right?
Right.
And wolves they're loud. They yell at each other in the night. You can hear where they're at, and people hear that and think, oh, these big scary predators are out there. But the mountain lion, meanwhile, the mountain lion's like 20 feet away in the tree, and you don't even know it.
Right. It's going to be fascinating to see in like the next decade or whatever how this Lassen Pack, how the cubs like disperse, because there's a wolf from the Lassen Pack that just settled with another wolf in the Klamath National Forest.
Right.
Now that area probably got burnt recently.
Right. Like, where do those guys go?
Right. It's like they're kind of going to be the start of, the revival of wolves. I mean, we talk about it all the time on this podcast.
Yeah.
How,
that's what fascinates. Yeah. They did a like public info meeting here in Susanville not too long ago about all the data that they have on these wolves. And they're kind of saying, okay, here we can trace like the DNA. We know that the OR7 wolf is, like, this is like the grandson basically. And right. this one's now here, and this one has, but then it's like, okay, this one now found a mate, and we don't know where that one came from. Right. Like, okay, how many of those are there? How many, how many other wolves this is some random wolf that just showed up in Plumas County that might have come from, Wyoming or something. We don't know. I was like, well, okay, how many others are out there that we don't know about? It's pretty interesting.
And we know that the one that just came down through Oregon went all the way down to like Santa Barbara and just came back. I mean, they travel so far. Yeah. And the only reason we know that is because we're tracking them,
Mm-hmm.
I'm fascinated by it, and I just think it's kind of the start of this wolf revival in California that is, certainly going to be controversial and everything, but it's fascinating to watch. So
yeah, it really is.
Well, great talking to you, Randy, man. I'm a huge fan, and your Facebook page is awesome. If anyone is listening, you can follow him, Randy Robbins Photography on Facebook.
Yeah.
Where
Thanks,
else
man.
can people see your work?
We got a website. There's a link to that on my Facebook page. Facebook's probably the easiest. Randy Robbins Photography. I'm Randy Robbins of Susanville on Instagram. I'm horrible at Instagram though. I'm on Facebook more, but I try.
Well, we got to get you more on Instagram. That's the new, especially for a photographer like you, man. It's such a perfect medium.
I know. But can we whine about Instagram for a minute as a photographer?
Let's do it. Yeah.
You can only post to Instagram from a mobile device. And what photographer is going to just take a picture on a mobile? I mean, it's such the selfie culture app. It kills me because you got to get an image off your camera. You got to put it on the computer. You got to do the editing process. Then you got to either email it to yourself or airdrop it or somehow get it onto your phone and then upload it to Instagram. And then it wants to crop it for you and apply new filters and re-edit it for you. No, let me just post my picture, man. So,
that's a great point. We spend a lot of time just airdropping, and we have.
Yeah.
I can post from my computer, but it's kind of a pain, and you don't know how it's going to render on the phone. And
right.
I get what you're saying.
It kills me. I try. I'm trying.
We got to get the photos out
old.
to more places, though. That's all I'm saying.
True. Yeah.
But people can go to your website and buy prints of everything, right?
Right. Yeah. Everything I put on Facebook is generally something I put on the website. And I've got, I forget how many hundreds of pictures on there now, but it's growing. It's growing all the time. Yeah.
Awesome. Randy Robbins Photography. Go check him out on Facebook. Randy, thanks for coming on, man. It was great talking.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
All right. Big thanks to Randy for coming on the show. What a great guest he was. He is, I didn't expect to get into the wildfire stuff, although I knew I wanted to talk to him. When we set up the interview, he's like, yeah, I'd love to come on, just letting you know we're dealing with sweeping blackouts right now. But just his, I know he is really into wildlife and just dealing with these wildfires and the controversy surrounding it. You look at our comment section whenever we talk about fires and people are trying to environmentalists this and all this stuff. And so I'm glad he really was able to talk about it in a succinct way and describe it kind of the way I feel about it.
And, honestly, and you never know with photographers, artists, if they're going to be weirdos, if they're going to be pretty straightforward. Randy seemed super cool super
guy,
down to earth, a guy I would absolutely go grab a beer with. I would go try to find, wolves to go photograph.
I cannot wait because I know he's gonna find those wolves eventually, and how anybody that listens to this or follows us on anything knows how much we are fascinated with the Lassen Pack and everything. So Randy, go do it. Get those photos of the Lassen Pack. We want to see them really bad. But thanks again to him for coming on the show. So we wanted to end the show today. It is the 3-year anniversary of a incident that changed my life. It changed a lot of our friends' lives, and that is the Carr Fire. It is the 3-year anniversary, like I said. July 23rd, 2018, a flat tire on a trailer sparked the Carr Fire in Whiskeytown National Recreation Area. 39 days later, that fire burned 1,600 structures, claimed 7 lives, and torched 230,000 acres. I think what's most significant, on top of it just impacting the place we grew up, I think all of our friends were probably evacuated due to this fire at the time.
Yeah.
And it seemed like a once in a lifetime occurrence, right? I think of the Jones Valley fire that happened near Shasta Lake. I don't remember when that was. It was, 2004, 2007 or something like that. That seemed like a once in a lifetime thing where a lot of homes were, and this is similar, right? When you watched it, you saw the fire in NATO, you saw it was getting international attention from the media, and 3 years later, it seems like the normal occurrence. But at the time, it seemed new to us. So what do you remember about the Carr Fire?
I remember vividly what was happening. So I was in culinary school at the time. I think it was right at the end of the right before the second semester, something like that. I remember I had a few days off. So I was sitting at the house that I was living in and just with my computer on my lap, just watching the news. All I could do was I wanted updates. People, the place that I grew up, the place that I consider my home, really, you know, our childhood home, was literally burning in front of my eyes, and there was nothing I could do about it. I just wanted to get updates. Where is this fire? Who has lost their homes? And we knew many people that lost their homes, and it was terrible. What reminded me that it was the anniversary this week was on Facebook, it had like a memory pop up, and it was the picture of the Reading Fire Department with the black thing through
Jeremy Stoke.
The Jeremy Stokes thing. Yeah. So,
if anyone who doesn't know, Jeremy Stoke tragically lost his life basically the first night of the fire, or maybe it was the second night of the fire.
Firefighter doing his job defending the local area, tragically lost his life, and that was terrible. But I remember feeling incredibly anxious and sad, and feeling like there was nothing I could do, being, you know, a couple 100 miles away, but nothing to do. I reached out to a couple of those companies that provide food for either people that are out of their home or firefighters fighting the fight. And they were so busy getting all of these people that I never was contacted by them. I tried, like, I can cook, like, put me on the front lines. I'll do what I can. But they were all so busy that they never got back to me. So I remember it vividly. What do you remember about it?
Well, I was in Paris. I was in Paris, France with my then girlfriend, now wife.
Shout out Britt.
Shout out Brittany, who I was dealing with some sort of jet lag, and I was up at like 3 a.m. France time, and this fire had sparked in Whiskeytown. And I've talked about this a lot. You know, it was 2017 when I was going to an event that was over on the coast, and one of the fires basically stopped this event from happening. And I said, well, okay, for Active NorCal, we have to cover these fires because they're changing things. And we talked about it. Lassen, the place we talk about all the time, is now closed because of the Dixie Fire. So it's something that we have to talk about. So I pulled out my computer and I started covering the fire. It seemed like a small occurrence, but it was in Whiskeytown, which is a big part of our content. And I watched it grow overnight because I was on a different clock. It was the middle of the night for the people who were living through it, but it was the middle of the day for me, and I was watching it, and it was scary. It was really scary. I have a bunch of friends who lost their homes. I remember one of my best friends lives near it. All the homes around him were burnt. And right after I got home, him and I drove through his neighborhood and just saw all these homes, which was crazy. We saw this house that was burnt to the ground, and it was like this 2-story house, and the garage was at the bottom, and this guy had all these old cars, all these old restored cars that you could see that were burnt to a crisp. And so it certainly changed my outlook on these fires, and so much has changed. I mean, at the time, it was the 6th biggest fire in California's history. Now, just 3 years later, it's the 12th biggest. So think about that. I mean, in the 150 years or whatever that we've been tracing these fires, it went from 6 have burned larger. It's just a crazy statistic, and
it's almost like I wish we could bet on fires happening so that we could use the money we make in those bets to pay for all of the damage those fires do.
Yeah,
because it's almost like it's a lock that we're gonna get more horrendous fires similar to this, and there's nothing we can do about it.
By the way, the Carr Fire was bad because it took a lot of homes, and it took some lives, and devastating in that aspect. But it seemed so big at the time, the 6th largest fire. The Dixie Fire is about to surpass it, and that's insane. Our first big fire of the season. Really,
it's not even fire season. Yeah,
I know. So it's sort of changed the new normal that we have, and the Fire NATO. The Fire NATO was a new phenomenon, and
it's happened since. Couple times, right?
What do you mean? It happens all the time.
Right
The Dixie
now.
Fire had it. The Tamarack Fire had it this year. I believe we saw a little bit of it on the Mount Shasta fires. So this is, fires are burning hotter now, and they're creating their own weather. But that was the first time we really saw it in a big sense, this fire NATO, which was swirling around, taking all these neighborhoods in West Reading, moved all the way from Whiskeytown Lake to Trinity Lake to Shasta Lake. It burned all of them, 360 square miles. And, it was such a national thing that Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke visited the burn area. He likened it to what was a war zone. So it was such a big, this fire was such a big part of my life, and I didn't even live through it. I had moved out of Reading, 2 years prior, but watching this in real time was really scary. And since then, in the 3 years since, we've seen the largest fire in California's history, the August Complex Fire, over 1 million acres. Our first, I forget what we call it, whatever. It's a 1 million acre fire. It's the first one ever in California, as well as another, really tough fire, the Camp Fire. 85 deaths, 18,000 structures, the most destructive and deadliest fire. So since the Carr Fire, everything feels different, but it just, to me, looking back on fires, how fires have changed in Northern California, to me, and I know there's been other fires that have affected lives that were different, in Lake County and over in like the Santa Rosa area. But for me, this is kind of what changed everything. So,
it's not a happy anniversary. We're happy it's behind us, but we see some things like this happening again in the future. But we just need to acknowledge that 3 years ago, we were all going through a really shitty time, probably, emotionally, and just devastating fire. So we have to acknowledge it so we can pay respect to it.
Yes, it's. I think so much has changed in the past 3 years, and we are probably going to see, once again, the worst fire season in California's history. 2020 was the worst. 2021 is already far exceeding what 2020 was.
To that point in the year.
To this point in the year. So when do we hit the peak? When do we hit the tipping point? You know what I mean? And just, again, I know there's different fires and people live through, Lake County was ravaged by fires with the August Complex and a few others. In the Santa Rosa area, we drove through all those burnt houses in Santa Rosa. Yeah. That was really sad. But, to me, this is the time where things change for me. And our content and my life has sort of been surrounded by these wildfires, which is just terrible. And, I guess a lot of people don't like the term the new normal, but this is, every year we just wait for this. And then we spend the rest of the time recovering from it, and then it happens again, and we recover, and PG&E starts half of them now, and that's a whole different thing. But this is the Carr Fire. Just it's, even though I didn't live through it like a lot of my friends, my close friends who lost their homes did, it still is close to my heart. So. I knew you wanted to push the button. Thank you for ending on a high note.
I actually have something else I want to talk about because I do want to end on a high note.
Okay, what do you got?
So we talk about this at the end of most episodes, but I'm never prepared for it. But I'm prepared for it today. I want to acknowledge some of the comments and some of the reviews from Talking NorCal.
Do we have some?
I have 3 that I want to read.
I never look at them.
So the first one is the OG, and I don't know. It's the very first one. I don't know who it is. I'm sure it's one of your friends, but got to shout him out. Distono, Distono. This review was from a little over a year ago.
Okay.
Just wanted to throw out a 2 big thumbs up for the Talking NorCal podcast. Love that podcast. These guys are great, and are sharing their passion from our amazing home. Keep it up, and maybe some roller hockey content too, please. So it's clearly got to be somebody.
Oh, yeah. It's probably. I don't know who Distono is.
Shout out to Distono. They are the OG, the first one. Now, the one that we have read before.
Wait, how do they make their names? This is on Apple Podcasts,
It's an
right?
Apple review. So this is via the Apple.
I didn't know you had like names on Apple Podcasts. Oh, well. All right, keep going.
The second one we've read before, but it's just a great one. Love, love, love. My favorite podcast. Informative and funny. Easygoing while still hitting the hard topics. Their love for our amazing Northern California and all of us who call it home is evident. That's
what's
Jay Mika for me.
I think I follow that guy on Instagram now. I think I found who that. Yeah.
Shout out that guy.
Yep.
Follow me. I'll follow you back, Jay Mika for me. And the most recent one.
We have a new one.
Yeah, the most recent, of the three that we're highlighting, the most recent one. Love this podcast. Cool stories about the great California outdoors by entertaining podcast hosts Zach and Bob. Thanks for the entertaining show. That's from Steve Moth. Steve, thanks, buddy.
Steve Moth?
Steve, M-O-T-H.
I have a friend, Steve, and if he's listening, shout out Steve, good hockey buddy of mine from the Bay Area, who listens to every episode, and he always emails me about it. But thanks to everyone listening. Again, we
have 13 reviews, all 5 stars, by the way. So go and continue that streak.
How do we do like a giveaway for reviews?
We talk about it on here and then send whoever.
Yeah, but can they put like their contact information so we know who left the review?
Here's what you're going to do. You're going to leave a review. You're going to screenshot your review, and you're going to email that screenshot to
Zach at activenorcal.com.
If you do, we'll send you a Hella shirt.
I will choose one person to send a Hella shirt.
Hella shirt, yeah.
So let's break this down. If you write us a review, 5-star review.
It can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be on Apple. We are everywhere. So if you leave this comment somewhere, screenshot it and we'll go verify.
Screenshot it. Send it to Zach at activenorcal.com. Show it to me. I'm going to choose one of you by the time next week. I'm going to send you a Hella NorCal shirt. Mark it down right now.
I don't even have a Hella NorCal shirt yet. So, I mean, whoever gets that is...
It's in... By the way, a video we posted to social, like everyone was asking, hey, where do I get a Hella shirt? Store.activenorcal.com. Use the promo code NorCal.
$10 off.
$10 off. Okay, and that does it for this episode of the Talking NorCal podcast. Be sure to subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Like we said, we're everywhere. Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. Make sure to follow us on social media at Talking NorCal on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Also follow Active NorCal. You probably already do at Active NorCal, Instagram,
Full
Facebook,
episodes
Twitter.
On YouTube.
Full episodes on YouTube, Talking NorCal. We also have all the highlights of this show on Active NorCal's YouTube. I appreciate the support. And remember, stay active.
NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and I could spend all day just chilling in the South Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and Darren knows how to kick it down in Santa Cruz. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and we get a little cray-cray when we visit the East Bay. We're NorCal.